this parasha, we are introduced to one of our imaot, Rivka. We know about Sarah, the great sitkut of Sarah, that Abraham eulogized her with Eshet Chayil, all her virtues. But Rivka was no less a tzaddiket. Rivka came from a family, Betuel, Lavan, of Avodah Zarah, people who served idols. And morally, they had a lot of problems. And yet she became the tzaddiket she was. And when she came into the home of Yitzhak Avinu, it says over there that the Chazal tell us that Veinachem, Yitzhak had nechama, was consoled after the death of his mother. Chazal tell us because when he brought her into his home, the three simanim, three mitzvot, which have to do with the woman, and b'zchuta, there was a light. The light from Erev Shabbat lasted all the week till the next Shabbat. That's the light which a woman gives in a home. Through example, there's a ner of Shabbat, the influence of Shabbat, which is lit by a woman, and that can last the whole week. That was the ner Shabbat, Erev Shabbat, Erev Shabbat. And that's what came back when Sarah was alive. That light emanated from the tent of Yitzhak. And when Rivka came, even she had come from a home of Avodah Zarah, she became such a big tzaddiket. That light also, like Sarah, from Erev Shabbat to Erev Shabbat, she made the influence of Shabbat last the whole week. Then it says there was a Shekhinah on the oil. That's a relationship with the husband was on such a high level of Kedusha, of holiness, that the Anane Kavod stood on top of the tent. The Shekhinah shone in their relationship. What for the world is mundane and disgusting. For Am Yisrael is Kedusha, the relationship between a husband and a wife, full of Kedusha, from basic things, even though it has to do with the personal tavot of a person, but they can be sanctified and there's a Kedusha. And that came back because she was such a tzaddiket and her relationship with Yitzhak was so holy. How much a woman can do. And then there's a mitzvah of challah, a mitzvah that you take challah because you realize that even all the bread we eat, that comes from Hashem. And you give a portion from that for the Kohanim, for those people who need. That bracha be'isa. And in turn, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives parnasa and bracha to the husband, to the family, because of the zchut of the woman, because of her mitzvah. So in the time of Sarah, the bracha be'isa, you put a quantity of isa, but it went a long way. Bekamut, it went through. Be'echut, it went through. And that bracha returned, and there's bracha be'isa in the bracha, in the food which was presented to Yitzhak Avinu, to the family. It was through Rivka, like through Sarah. Three mitzvot which a woman has. A woman has, she can make the Shabbat, which will last influence from one week to the other. She can make Kedusha in a home, in a relationship with her husband. She can make bracha, she can bracha to the parnasa of her husband. This is what Rivka was zochetu, and she was one of the imaot. She became one of the imaot for all the generations which came from her. There is a little bit, so that's the greatness of Isaac. She came from such a home and yet she overcame everything. There is a downside, which the Pasuk says later on. When Esav married the Hittite woman, and they were nacha, they were doing Avodah Zarah, they were doing bad things in their home. Yes, with Esav, in Esav's home. But he and Esav lived with Yitzhak. V'ki zaken Yisach ותהיינה עיניו מראות, ויקרא את עשיו בנו, and that's the thought. But before that it says that ויהי עשיו בן 40 שנה, ויקח אישה את יהודית בת בארי, החיתי, ואת אסמת בת אלון החיתי, ותהיינה מורת רוח ליצחק ולרבקה. And they caused the bitterness and caused Yitzhak and Rivka a lot of upset, because they did things in the home which was not about the Zara and things like that, and it caused upset to Yitzhak and Rivka. The Chachamim asked, why does it say Yitzhak and then Rivka? Why not Rivka and Yitzhak? She was more at home. She would have noticed it much more. Well, it would be, says the Chacham, שהיו עובדות עבודה זרה, ותהייהם לשון מרת רוח. So why Yitzhak and then Rivka? Because it bothered Yitzhak more than it bothered Rivka. Why so? Rivka was a great tzaddiket. But Chachamim draw attention to the fact that Yitzhak couldn't tolerate it. He was brought up by Avraham Avinu. Whereas Rivka was brought up in the house of Lavan and Betuel. Even though she left her home at 3 years old, very young. But the effect of that, Avodah Zarah, of being in such an atmosphere, had some effect that she could tolerate it more than Yitzhak Avinu. Of course she didn't tolerate it, but she could tolerate it a bit more, because the effect of how she was brought up, even 60 years later, the effect of what a child sees in their life, what they absorb in their life, can have an effect all their life. And therefore she'd seen Avodah Zarah, she'd been in contact with it in the home of her father. It had an effect 60 years later. And Yitzhak was more disturbed by it than Rivka. She could tolerate it. We see from here, when we open our children to the influences of the street, to what there is, the rubbish and the garbage you find on all these, what we call, give them the phones and whatever it is, it can have an effect on them years and years and years later, even the tzaddikim. So therefore, how much more we should be careful. Let us learn a lesson that from Rivka, that even she came from a background, she overcame all those difficulties, and she brought the Shekhinah back, and she did all the wonderful things. But downside, there is an effect with our children when they're young. They're open to influences from the street. It has an effect on them for the rest of their lives. Let us take care. Shabbat Shalom.